In the previous video, I had gone through how we updated our homepage and it had gotten bigger and was making it slower. So what we ended up doing was a few things, and I'll go over them in just 1 second, but let's quickly look at our stats to see if it made any changes. Here's our original homepage, here's after the new design was rolled out, and here's after the changes we made. And the changes we made were, if you recall, we stuck a font file onto a CDN so that would load faster, and also took all the images and optimized them so they were much smaller. So let's just quickly look and see. I know we brought our page load from about 1.6 or so down to about 1.2, 1.3. And as you look at the size of the page, the number of resources didn't quite change. That's steady up there. But the page size went way down, and that's kind of what we expected. We weren't changing things around other than just the size of the images. So the optimizations worked as expected. And let's just double check here. We can see the font file was taken about a second and a half, and the images almost a second each. And now the font file over here is under a second, and the images down here are way quicker, about 200 milliseconds, almost 3/10 of a second. So that's awesome, but we can always do better. So let's do one more round and we'll try and see what our low-hanging fruit is, and then we'll make those changes and then report back again. We'll just try this one more time because I'd like to get back down to as close to 1 second as possible. So if we look at our resources tab, it's going to go ahead and again aggregate all the data from the recent test that it's ran and let us know that we've got a plugin file that's still pretty big, and it's still complaining about that icons font. Even though it went down in page speed, down to under a second, it's still pretty big. And something that kind of stands out to me is that it's using a TrueType font. And TrueType fonts were really compatible back in the day. I mean, they're still compatible now, but now there are better font types out there. WAF and WAF 2 are much faster, they are cleaner, and they are accepted. If you look at the can I use chart over here, um, almost every major browser, everything in green, supports the WAF format. So what I want to do, I'm wondering why we're loading the TrueType font. Let me take a quick look at our CSS and oh, actually, not in this. Oh, the CSS of the icon font. Here we go. So here's the CSS of the icon font, and you can see it's specifying an EOT, a TrueType font, and a WAF. So uh, I'm not sure why it's loading the TrueType font over the WAF, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just kind of get rid of that TrueType. I'm going to get rid of everything except for the WAF definition, so that it kind of forces the WAF. And that should make a pretty decent difference. If you look at the size of these files, the TrueType font is 184K and the WAF version is 66K. So that's a huge difference. I know you may be confused by something you just saw there. Even though this TrueType font is 184K, if you look at the actual download of it, this is going to show that it only downloaded 106K of it. And the reason for that is because our servers are set up properly to, well, this server specifically is set up properly to zip it. So it's basically taking that content and zipping it and then sending it to the browser, and the browser is unzipping it. So we're not getting the full lag of the 184, it's only 100K. But if we bring that down to 66K, then maybe we'll end up with maybe a 40K or so actual download on the page. And that would be way better than what we're seeing right now. So I'll go ahead and try and make that change. The bummer about that is that we were using a CDN to kind of host this font file. Since we're going to have to make changes to the CSS that font used, um, we can't, of course, change the CDN since it's a public CDN. So what I'll do is I'll just basically make our own CDN. I could spin up a little bucket on CloudFront, which I've done right here, and that'll allow us not only to host that font ourselves, but it can host all the other static content, our images and other stuff. So it's cool. I just kind of set that up, and then it points directly to our origin. So I don't have to upload anything. I just point it to our server, and CloudFront will take care of caching it and distributing it to all the different edge locations. It doesn't require a lot of setup on our end, other than just changing the paths. Okay, so that's going to take care um, of our icon font, and some of our images will also be a little bit faster. I'm still worried about this plugins file. If I look at the code there, this plugins file was part of a template. This whole homepage is part of a template that I kind of customized. So it's loading a ton of these plugins. It's got jQuery, it's got something called Popper, Bootstrap, of course, Easing, Modernizer, FlexLetter, a bunch of stuff in here that I'm not really using on the homepage, or on any page that we're going to be using. So I'll go ahead and keep jQuery. I think, of course, we'll need a Bootstrap in there as well. But the slider, this easing, there's a couple other things in here. There's a magnific pop-up. We're not using that at all. So just by going ahead and removing those, I'll shave off from 253K down to 183. And again, this will be gzipped. So hopefully the total size of the plugin file will be much smaller than that. So I'll go ahead and make that change as well. And then the last thing that I noticed is if you look at this, look at all these fonts. I've got not just our icon font, but all these WAF2 files. Those are all fonts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different fonts, if I counted right. But that confuses me because if you look at our CSS, I'm only downloading 2. I did a little bit of research on this. Apparently, each one of these numbers passed is a font weight. So here is a very skinny weight, here's kind of regular, here's regular italic, here's bold, and here's bolder. I don't think I need all that. So I'm going to go through and kind of clean this up a little bit. Luckily, it'll only download, even though if you specify a lot of stuff in here, it'll only download what it requires in the CSS. But just by getting rid of a few of these, it will kind of force it to kind of fall back on another font weight if we don't have it specified in the CSS up here. So I'll go through and it'll slightly probably make the page look a little different. You know, maybe these will be a tiny bit thicker or a tiny skinnier. But I'll try and maintain the best look as possible. And I think it'll be a small price to pay so that we're not downloading all of these fonts. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make those changes. To recap, the plugins file should be, plugin JavaScript file should be smaller. The TrueType font should be replaced by a WAF file. I'll get rid of a few of these WAF2 requests. And while I'm at it, since I set up the CDN for the WAF file, I might as well just add all the images to the CDN as well. So I'm going to go ahead and make those changes. We will check back in a few days, and hopefully we'll see the same kind of increase in speed that we saw before.